Hello class, welcome back to StudyWave Academy, where education is without limits. Welcome back to our English class, and let's continue understanding what word meaning in context structure is. So we talked about what word meaning in context structure actually means and what it's all about. We looked at the different components like the word meaning. We also looked at context. We went ahead to look at structure, and then after that we looked at the three main things that are involved in this topic of word meanings in context structure. We looked at recognizing the different meaning or meanings of a word, then determining which meaning is appropriate based on the context, and finally using the surrounding words and phrases to interpret the word meaning. Okay, then I gave you a simple example here of the crane. So you want to find out which crane is being talked about in a sentence. So what you'll do, you need to find the sentences around this word or the phrases around this word or the words that surround this specific word, and try analyze yourself and find out what the writer actually means or what the other words are actually talking about. And through this you can be able to get the exact meaning that is expected of you. After that we looked at something and I introduced you to the phrasal verbs. I gave you what it means, what it entails, and I went ahead to give you the main parts in which phrasal verbs are divided into: the main verb and the particles. Okay, and we talked about these particles being the prepositions and the adverbs. Then I went to examples where I showed you these examples and even gave examples in sentences that will help you like better understand these phrasal verbs. Okay, so we looked at turn up, give up, take off, we looked at get over, we looked at another one, look forward to, put off. We also looked at run out of, bring up, and these last two examples, the break up and call off. And I asked you to get used to using these words when you're speaking or when you're writing. They make your sentences and they make your speech very, very interesting to listen to. So right now I want us to look at something very interesting again. So in our last class we looked at the parts of speech. Okay, we discussed what they are, and we're going to be continuing on other types of parts of speech. So in the last class we measured on specific types, we looked at other types of the parts of speech, and now we'll continue from where we left. So welcome, and now let me just remind you what we talked about the last time. So I said there are 8 traditional parts or 8 parts of speech in English. Okay, they're just 8 of them, and these categories are the categories in which words are classified into based on their grammatical and syntaxical functions in a sentence. Okay, and I give an example like every word in a sentence has a category in which they belong to. So these categories are what we call the parts of speech. Now today I want us to remind ourselves of these 8 parts of speech. So there's the noun, there's the pronoun, there's the verb, there's the adjective, adverb, preposition, conjunction, and interjection. So now I will look at the last class we looked at some of these. We looked at the adjectives, we looked at the verbs, we looked at some of these. So today we will continue looking at other examples and just understand what they are and what they entail. So the first example I look at is the adverbs. So I gave you a brief introduction to what adverbs are and what they do. So basically these are just parts of speech that modify verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs, or the entire sentence. So they just provide additional information about how, when, where, or to what extent an action was done. So I told you, for example, there's a verb, maybe run. You want to give more information on how this verb was done. So you want to like give more information how a certain thing was done or a certain action was done. So for example, the verb run, you want to show or tell how someone ran. So you'll say maybe they ran quickly. So quickly there becomes adverb of manner. So we look at even types of the adverb. So we find there's the adverb of manner that basically just tells us how an action was done. So how did she run? She ran quickly. Okay, so maybe she came to class very late. So very there shows to what extent this person was late. So it was very late. So they're just these words that are used to give more information about an adverb itself, about an adjective, a verb, and even an entire sentence. Okay, so those are what we call adverbs. Now we will look at the types, because we find that most of these parts of speech are divided into subcategories. Like the nouns, we have the proper nouns, formal nouns. We talked about this in our past class, and today, even when you look at adverbs too, we find they're also divided into categories. Okay, where we find we have like the adverb of manner. This is the first category, and manner just shows how something was done, in what manner. Okay, so for example, something was done quickly, something was done softly, something was done carefully. So they're called the adverbs of manner. So these adverbs describe how an action was performed or how an action was done. So maybe an action was done quickly, like I gave you an example of the running. She ran quickly. Okay, so an action was done quickly. Or maybe she ate carefully, or she ate the fish because the fish had bones, so she ate the fish carefully. Okay, she sang softly. How did she sing? Softly. So these are just adverbs that tell us how an action was performed or how an action was done. So an example here is she danced gracefully at the ballet recital, moving across the stage with elegance. Okay, so that is just an example of how it shows how did she dance. So if you look at this sentence, you ask yourself, how did she do an action? So let me just point it out for you. So just look at here. Let me point it out for you. So if you look at here, this gracefully is our adverbs or our adverb of manner, because we ask ourselves, how did she dance? Gracefully. Okay, how did she dance? Gracefully. Okay, so gracefully becomes our adverb of manner. Okay, so that is an example there. So this is the first example, the adverb of manner. They show how an action was performed. Don't forget that. They show how something was done, how an action was performed. So that is one. Then I hope we understand that, and we can even add more examples. These are not only the examples here, so I've just given fewer examples. So let me get rid of my drawing there. So these are just few examples here: the quickly, softly, quietly, tenderly, bravely. So adding ly to an adjective can form an adverb actually, because soft is an adjective. Okay, so maybe the soft cake was baked. Okay, so soft is an adjective describing the cake, but if you want to make it become an adverb, now you add an ly to it, so it becomes softly, showing how something was done. Something was done softly. So that's an adverb of manner. Then let's move to the next type, and that is the adverb of frequency. Adverbs of frequency. Now frequency, these are just adverbs that indicate how often an action occurs, or how often something or an action has occurred. So frequency, when you hear the word frequency, it just comes with time. So anytime you hear frequency, it's all about time. Okay, so these adverbs of frequency, they tell us how or indicate how often an action has occurred or an action has been done. So we have examples here like always, often, or often. So here most people would prefer saying the T here, but the correct English, the T is silent, so it's often. Okay, so even the E here is silent, so people will say often, but the right English is often. Okay, so these are the adverbs of frequency. They show how often or how often an action occurs. Okay, so even often itself is an adverb of frequency. Rarely, maybe they write essays rarely, or they rarely write their essays. They are always eating maybe fries. Okay, so these are actions of or adverbs of frequency that tell us how an action or how often an action occurs. They eat fries frequently. Okay, so frequently shows how often they love fries, or they always eat fries. Okay, they often, they rarely, those are adverbs of frequency showing us how often an action is done. He frequently, or like for example, let's have this example, this sentence: He frequently practices his guitar skills to become a better musician. He frequently practices his guitar skills to become a better musician. So how often does he practice his guitar skills? It's frequently. So frequently becomes our adverb of frequency, showing us how often he does this action of practicing for his guitar skills. So I hope you understand. So that is the adverbs of frequency, telling us how often an action occurs or an action is done. Then the next type is adverbs of time. Adverb of time just show us when an action took place, okay? So it's very simple again. Adverbs of time, they tell us how, not how exactly, but when an action has taken place or when an action takes place, okay? So time, today, later, tomorrow, in the evening, morning, at night, afternoon, all these are adverbs of time because they tell us when an action takes place. For example, here, we will go shopping tomorrow because the sales starts then. So tomorrow here, let me just point it out for you again. Now, tomorrow here becomes our adverb of time because it tells us when an action will be done. So this action of shopping will be done tomorrow, okay? So tomorrow becomes our adverb of time. So that is the other category of the adverbs. Then the next category is adverbs of place. Now with the adverbs of place, they tell us where an action occurs. So adverbs answer the questions where, when, how, okay? So the adverbs of how are the manner how an action has been done. It's manner. So how are the question how is answered by the adverbs of manner. Then the question also how often or how did something or how something has been done, or according to time, how is mentioned in frequency. So how answers the questions on frequency too. So frequency answers this question how, and also manner answers the question how. How was something done? Carefully, softly, or how frequent is something done? Often, rarely. So that those two answer the question how. Then when you come to time, time answers the question. Let me get rid of this drawing of mine. Time answers the question when. So when something was done, when was an action done, when was this action performed. So time answers the question when, okay? So don't forget about that. Then here we have adverbs of place now. So after looking at the adverbs of time showing us when something is done, now they answer the question when. Now, today, later. The next type is the adverbs of place. Now with the adverbs of place, they tell us where. So they answer the question where. They tell us where an action occurred or where an action occurs. So the treasure was buried deep under the ground, far from anyone's reach. So where's the action? Where's the adverb of place here? The treasure was buried deep under the ground. So you notice that the action, the adverb of place here is showing us where something. So where was the treasure buried? It was buried deep under the ground. So this is our adverb of place, showing us where something was buried, okay? So our adverb of place, sorry, let me mark it well. It's deep, far. So far here, far, sorry, I took the wrong underlining there. So far here becomes our adverb of place. It shows us how deep. So yes, the treasure was buried under the ground, very deep under the ground, but how far? It was far from people's reach, okay? So showing us that the treasure was buried far. So that is the adverb of place. And these adverbs of place answer the question where, okay? Where something was done. Then lastly, the last type is the this is the last type actually, the adverbs of place. So to conclude on adverbs, it is in these examples that I've given above, adverbs provide additional information about the action, the frequency, time, place, or degree of the described event. Understanding these adverbs helps to convey more precise and detailed information in sentences. Now, the reason why we have to understand adverbs is because even when we're talking to people or writing, we want to show them, we want to give them more information of our actions or on our actions, right? We want to tell them what place did we do a certain action, where did we do this action, to what extent, to what degree did we do this action. So that's the reason why we learn adverbs, to help us provide more additional information about the actions we have done, frequency, time, place, degree, and even describe the event in deeper length so that people can well understand that. So that's why we understand adverb.